Welcome to my very badly lit kitchen. I am going to make my dinner, so I thought I might chat with you about what I've been reading and watching recently while I do that. For the past year, probably almost 2 years now, when I make dinner or any meal, I put Dawson's Creek on. I just missed out on all of those kinds of teen shows or just American sitcoms in general from the 90s and the 2000s. That was just not something that my family watched growing up. So Dawson's Creek is the latest one that I'm catching up on. And Dawson's Creek is a good one because you don't need your full attention on it. You can just have it on in the background and you'll still know what's going on. I'm about to make some cornbread, so I will do that. And I will talk about the fact that I'm currently reading Either Or by Elif Batuman. This is going to be an experiment to see whether I can multitask. I'm probably going to find out that no, I cannot. My problem is when I'm cooking, I really do need to concentrate on the measurements. When I'm making something that requires measurements, I mean, obviously if I'm chopping vegetables, which I will be doing after I've done this, that's fine. So Either Or, it's really interesting reading a sequel to a literary fiction. I'm not sure I've ever done that before. The thing about books that I have read before that have sequels, they've all been YA dystopian or fantasy or kids books or just books where the plot is the main part of the story. So even if I was reading them at the time and waiting for the next book to come out, it's pretty easy to sort of go back, refresh yourself with what the plot was in the first book. Whereas with literary fiction, it's not about the plot. It's about the characters and the things that they're feeling. And so because of my terrible memory and the fact that I read The Idiot, it must be at least 3 years ago at this point, I don't really remember what happened in that book. I just remember Lynn was at a university, she's having a crush on this guy Ivan, or Ivan, as they kind of talk about in Either Or, and then she goes to Hungary in her summer holidays because he's from Hungary. And so Either Or just goes straight into this new story. There is no handy little recap about who these characters are, what happened in the first book. And so I'm feeling like this is a book that you need to have read the first one quite recently or just have a really good memory to really enjoy it, maybe. Because I'm definitely not enjoying it as much as I enjoyed the first book, which is sad because I really did like the first one. So it would be really interesting to go and read The Idiot and then read this one again. Not that I'm going to do that anytime soon, but it would be interesting to read them together to see if that improves the reading experience, whether it's purely because my memory is so poor of the first book, or if it's just not as good as the first book, which I'm also feeling that might be the case. I feel like there was just a drive to the first novel that was really propelling it, whereas in this book, it's about the aftermath of this crush and her coming to terms with whether it was anything, just sort of mourning this non-relationship that she had, but also kind of hoping that he will still eventually come back and say that he's in love with her. And otherwise it's her kind of just talking about the books that she's reading for university, a bit of her remembering her childhood, and then just things that people say at the uni. And I don't know, at the moment I'm just finding it a little dull. When I start reading it and getting into it, I'm quite enjoying it, but it's not making me want to pick it up after I put it down, which is sad. Just being disappointed by that because I was looking forward to it. It's a curse. I don't know if I've said this before, but I 100% believe I have a curse. If I buy a brand new book from a bookshop at full price, I am bound to not like it. In terms of brand new releases, I mean, not classics, obviously. So yeah, I shouldn't have bought it. I should have waited for the library reserve to come in and maybe I would have enjoyed it because then I wouldn't have had the curse. Anyway, I'm only just over halfway through, so I will keep reading. It's making me remember again because every time I read something set at a uni, I'm always reminded of how pitiful my university education was in terms of I wasn't reading about classics or learning great ideas or anything like that. The journalism degree I did was go and find a story and write about it, and that's it. So yesterday my sister and I went to a double screening of Twilight and New Moon. I would highly recommend watching Twilight with an audience that cheers every time a character comes onto screen. It's so funny. We were given Twilight bingo, which in the end I couldn't do because I couldn't see the sheet of paper in the dark, obviously. But also very much encouraged to shout out things to the screen. So it was very entertaining. Every time Jacob came on screen, people would shout at him that he's dates a baby, stuff like that. People were big fans of Charlie Swan, Bella's dad. He got the biggest cheer every time he was on screen, which is understandable now that we are all older. We can recognize that he is the best man in the film. Twilight's such a funny thing for me because I just read it and watched those films, or like the first film at least, at the exact right time. I was 14 years old when that film came out. I read all the books before, like the same year I think, because just everyone in my high school was reading them. Our English teacher was like sharing around her copies of the novels. And like watching it now, it's just the most nostalgia hit of that time. Especially because like the first film is genuinely trying to be good. Catherine Hardwicke is an indie director. She wanted to make something artistic and different, and she kind of succeeded in like, I guess, a retrospective camp way. There's not much you can do with like such a crazy story. The costumes especially. All the clothes that the teenagers wear are genuinely things that we wore back in the day. Like those Henley tops with the buttons. I had a green one and I loved it. She has so many different coloured ones, Bella. It made me want to like go on Depop and find some, but I believe all the teenagers have made them super expensive because they're all dressing in Twilight core at the moment. Or they were a few months ago. I didn't realise it at the time, but looking back on it now, it's like no wonder teenagers were so into these films, because there was a genuine effort, at least in the first one, to make them an accurate representation of teenagers at the time. And in New Moon, Bella gets a digital camera for her birthday. I had 2 different digital cameras. I was obsessed with the idea I was going to be a great photographer with my little digital cameras. The way she's listening to her iPod as well, and the like iconic scene where he saves her from the car. It made me think, was I more influenced by Twilight than I like actually thought? A film I saw recently that is genuinely very good is called Official Competition. It has Penelope Cruz, Antonio Banderas, and another guy whose name I don't remember, which is bad of me, but kind of ties into the whole plot of the film in a way. It's a very, very meta film about filmmaking, about indie filmmaking especially, and the pretentiousness of it, and the pretentiousness of film directors and actors and their methods and all that kind of thing. And I found it hilarious. I thought it was so funny. I just love meta stuff. It starts off with this rich businessman. He's about to turn 80. And he's talking to his assistant about what he can do to celebrate the fact that he's turning 80. And at first he's like, oh, let's build a bridge. I'll put my name on a bridge. That'd be great. And then he's like, no, actually, I want to fund a film. And it's going to be the best film ever. He gets the rights to what I assume is quite a famous Spanish novel. And he hires Penelope Cruz, who's a very renowned director, to direct the film, and she insists that Antonio Banderas and this other guy have to be in it. Antonio Banderas, he's playing an actor who is in American films a lot. He does a lot of commercial films, makes a lot of money, and has a lot of like young girlfriends, different young girlfriends throughout the film. And then you contrast that with this other actor who is very well respected in Spain, but no one knows him outside of Spain. Again, with the casting, that's the joke of like, yes, well, the Western audience is going to know Antonio Banderas, and we don't know who this other guy is. Like, the meta goes many levels. He's so pretentious that he dislikes Antonio Banderas instantly for being a sellout, but he is equally as annoying in his own way, even though he thinks of himself as being this better and great artist sort of thing. It just goes through the motions of them rehearsing this film. Penelope Cruz putting them through these different weird exercises that are supposed to like help their creative process. It's definitely a little weird, but in a good way. It's really, really funny. It balances really well the comedy, the satire, but also the actors are good enough that we still believe in these people as real. Like, they don't go into full stereotypes. And you do kind of care for them and hope that this film goes well by the end, even though they can be like atrocious. Something else I've been enjoying recently is the TV show Hacks. It's in its 2nd season, and I definitely heard about the 1st season when it came out, but I never watched it. And then it's sort of got much more Emmy buzz this year, and the people in it have been doing the rounds in terms of interviews and stuff like that. So I finally actually watched it, and I've just started the 2nd season, and I can kind of see why it's only getting the attention that it is now, because although the 1st season is very good, the 2nd season just amps it up. It's about this she's a comedian. I guess she's a stand-up comedian, but she's kind of a writer as well in LA called Ava. And she's pretty much cancelled amongst the comedy circles because of a tweet she made. So she's desperate for work, and her manager sets her up with Deborah Vance, who is played by Jean Smart, and she's a very famous stand-up comedian who's had a residency in LA for many years. And so Ava is of course horrified at the idea of working for someone who's done the same jokes for like 20 years. But of course, once they get to know each other, they realize they're both as horrible as each other. They're not unlikable though. That's the good thing about this show. It's really well-written characters, because they would be really annoying if you met them in real life. But because we're seeing everything from their point of view, you feel a lot of sympathy for them. Like, they are very sympathetic characters as well. So they sort of realize that they actually have a lot more in common than they first realized. And of course, Ava realizes that Deborah Vance used to be a very interesting and provocative comedian back in the day, before the world loses interest of a woman when she gets older, obviously. So it's like just talking about that kind of stuff. Even though this shouldn't be a talking point, but it still is so refreshing to watch a show that is about two women. Romance is not at all a part of the main plot. There are obviously romantic relationships within the show, but it's about this strange friendship between these two women. It's such a great relationship to mine from, because you just don't see it on screen that often. I think that's all I had to say for now. So I will stop talking and finish my dinner, and I'll update you when I've read some more of Either Or, which I didn't mean to rhyme. So I just went to the op shop, and I may have gone a bit crazy in the DVD section. As you can see behind me, collecting DVDs is a little bit of a hobby of mine. It has got to the point where I've run out of front shelf space, so I'm actually going to have to sort through them and decide which ones I want at the front and which ones I can like stack behind the front ones. Usually the op shop has the same movies over and over again, a lot of rom-coms from the early 2000s, a lot of action movies, a lot of just the big blockbusters. My local op shop is surprisingly good for how small it is. I think because it's very centrally located, so a lot of people donate stuff there. Anyway, today someone must have really recently dropped off a whole pile of their DVD collection, because there was just huge amount of older films that you do not normally get. I got Private Benjamin, which is a classic Goldie Hawn film that I've never seen. I got Days of Heaven, a classic Terrence Malick film that I've never seen, starring Richard Gere. It's such a horrible cover. Who designed this DVD cover and thought, yes, that'll attract people to buy it? I found Christine, a John Carpenter film based on a Stephen King novel. Every October I watch like spooky horror films throughout the whole month, so this will be a perfect one. Another great Halloween watch will be House on Haunted Hill. I believe this is based on The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I don't think the story is anything like the book. I'm pretty sure they've just taken the basic concept and turned it into like a Hammer horror type thing, but that should be fun. I found a Doctor Who serial DVD. This is actually an episode that I've never seen. I've seen pretty much all of the old Doctor Who because it was on ABC when I was a kid. This is like an episode that was missing, because back in the day the BBC used to delete episodes of their TV shows to like save space or reuse the reels or something. Absolutely insane. So there's actually a lot of classic BBC shows that have episodes missing. They for some reason kept all the audio, it's just the visual that's missing. So I think some of the episodes are like reconstructed with photos using the audio. This is Woman of the Year, which is a Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy film. I love Katharine Hepburn. She's amazing. I just want to look like her. Another old film, The Bandwagon, a musical with Fred Astaire. I automatically buy any musical I see. I just love on a Sunday afternoon putting on an old musical, and there are just so many that I haven't seen. Not all of them are that great, but you're always going to be entertained because the singing and the dancing is usually great. So you can't really go too wrong with an old musical, I think, aside from the ones with blackface. Obviously, we don't watch those ones. I know nothing about this. It's called Something to Talk About, and it stars Julia Roberts and Robert Duvall and Dennis Quaid from the 90s, I think. But I just love watching old American 90s or like 80s and 90s dramas or rom-coms. There's something endlessly amusing to me about watching very privileged people taking their problems so seriously. The Lady Killers is a classic Alec Guinness and Peter Sellers film, which I've definitely watched when I was a kid, but I don't remember anything about it, so that might be a fun rewatch. And then lastly, a Kevin Williamson film, who is the writer of Dawson's Creek, and he also did the Scream films, and he did a film called I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I haven't seen, but clearly he was a bit obsessed with Katie Holmes because she was in, obviously, Dawson's Creek, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and she's also in this film. It looks terrible, but the clincher for me is that Helen Mirren is in it. The back of the DVD says it's about these 3 teenagers. They do not like this teacher who's played by Helen Mirren, and so they kidnap her, I think. That's what I'm getting from the DVD. I think this will be another like campy, fun Halloween film to watch. So that was a little mini DVD haul. Now I have to go find a space to actually store these DVDs. So I finished Either Or by Elif Batuman, and I don't really have anything else to say that I didn't already say before in this vlog. Sometimes an ending can really make a book, but the ending of this one just made me so frustrated because I felt like it literally got interesting in the last page. And I've heard that Elif Batuman has decided not to write another book in this series. She's not going to do a third one. And that has just made me so frustrated because I honestly feel like this book is like the new moon of the Sailin series. It felt like a kind of annoying middle book that you need to get from the plot of the first book to the plot of the last book. And so if there was a third book coming, I would feel a lot better towards this book, but because there apparently isn't, though you never know, she might change her mind, then I sort of felt like, oh, what is the point of this book? I felt like anything that was original and interesting and fun that I enjoyed in the first book just either wasn't here in this book, or it was just trying to repeat it and it didn't work. Where I had found Sailin really charming beforehand, I just found her kind of annoying in this book. I found that the majority of the book was taken up with her recapping novels that she was currently reading, and I'm sure that was a big part of the first book as well. As I said before, I don't remember it in great detail, but I didn't feel like this recapping was telling me anything new about Sailin or her story. It truly just felt like she was giving a Wikipedia summary of some novels that she was reading, and I just didn't find that very interesting. And I just mainly found it a bit of a slog to get through, unfortunately. I know a lot of other people love this book, and I very much wish that I could be on the same page. I wish I had enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed The Idiot. I really hope that if I ever go to read The Idiot again, that I will still enjoy that book. I hope my opinion of The Idiot hasn't been clouded by not enjoying this one. There were definitely moments in the book that were interesting, where Sailin was talking about things that I hadn't really thought about before. I really wish I could articulate much better why I didn't like it. I just found it boring to read, and I think it just comes down to that really. So I'm going to end the vlog there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a really great day, and I will see you soon. Bye!